cannot tell you how excited I am for you to join me today. I am super stoked to get started on this sweater or sweater dress. It can be made into either. And I'm really excited because I'm going to be using this swish yarn from We Crochet. This is a worsted weight and it is so squishy. It's 110 yards per ball and it's 100% fine superwash merino wool. So, this is just amazing. It's a joy to work with. If you haven't ever worked with this yarn, it's definitely worth the splurge. The colors I'll be working with today are Estuary Heather, so that will be my blue, and then I've got this Rust Copper. It's just called Copper, and then my Nutmeg Heather. This is going to be the main body of the color work, and then these are my accent colors. Feel free to mix it up. See what works for your wardrobe and what you like and what color accent colors you enjoy. There's no right or wrong way to substitute colors, so you just go with what you feel like you want to do. You will also need a crochet hook. Today I'm going to be using the Furl Streamline Swirl in the Cookies and Cream in the size H5mm. You'll also need a tapestry needle, a stitch marker. Absolutely get a stitch marker because we are going to be working some rounds continuous without joining, so it's important to have that. And then of course some scissors. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a top-down sweater, which is amazing for trying on, and I love top-down sweaters. So we're going to be starting with that ribbing on the collar. For this video tutorial, I will be demonstrating this in the size small. However, the written pattern is sized extra small to 5X. So let's get started. All the sizes will start in the same way for this top ribbing. I'm going to simply make a slip knot and place that onto my hook and then chain 6. I like to tighten down the last chain, which is my turning chain, just on this first row. Now you can do a chain 1 at the end of every single row and use that as your chain 1 to start. That's not counted as a stitch, but you can also omit that, and I'm going to show you why. So I'm going to start in my second chain from the hook and single crochet into each stitch. So this is a total of 5 single crochet stitches per row. Now the rest of this will simply be a repeat of this row 2, where we will be working in the back loops only. So that's the loop farthest away from you. And we will be single crocheting 5 for every single row. Now, if you want to do a turning chain and tighten that down, you can. However, it's not necessary and it does add some bulk. So you can go right into that very first stitch in the back loop only and single crochet without doing a turning chain. Just make sure that every single row has 5 stitches. So I'm just working 5 stitches in that back loop only, and then I will turn and work 5 stitches in the back loop only. What this does is it makes a nice rib for the neck by working it in that back loop only, and you will be doing this for the size small. You'll want to do a total of 72 rows. But I also want to note that when it comes to ribbing, everyone has different tension, and ribbing can feel frustrating to some people because they might have a really different tension when it comes to this. So we're going to do 72 rows for the size small. I find it works most as written for most people, but if you find you need a few more rows, you can go ahead and add a few more rows so that it comfortably will fit around your head when we join. Then on the next row, you'll just simply follow instruction with how many stitches you need to start the round 1 when we start working the sweater. So work this for 72 rows and then come on back and I'll show you how to join your last row with your first row. Now after crocheting these stitches, the single crochet in the back loop only for 72 rows, you have a nice looking strip of ribbing. This will become our neck, but now we need to go ahead and join it. To do this, we will take our current row and our first row, and we're going to slip stitch those together. We're going to insert our hook into the back loop only of our current row, but then also through the loop on our first row, and then we will slip stitch those together. And we'll do that for all 5 of these stitches. We're simply going to be slip stitching through the back loop only of our current row and the first loop from our first row. And now that we have joined, it is time for us to start working in the round. We will be working around one side of this. I've left my starting tail on here just so you can double check to make sure yours is looking just like mine. Now this is where we will definitely want to be grabbing a stitch marker. This is worked continuously, so you will always want to make sure that you know where the first stitch in your round is. Now for this first part, we are going to be slip stitching loosely, don't make this too tight, in 1 stitch per row all the way around, which means that is 72 slip stitches. So do not make these slip stitches tight. If they're too tight, you may not be able to get your head through. To help you make those stitches loose, it helps to kind of pull up, which this is called the magic loop. That's the second loop of your stitch. Pull it up a little bit more and then pull it through. That way it gives it a little bit of space before pulling through that loop. So go ahead and slip stitch 1 stitch per row all the way around, and you'll have 72 stitches. And it is wise to go ahead and mark the very first stitch of the round from here on out. Now for this next part, you're going to notice my yarn colors changed just for this section of the video. This is my color A, and I'm using this as my color B and my color C most likely. I'm making a sweater, so I'm working this again, and during testing, I shifted around the chart, so I'm updating this section with the chart that is current. So I want to go ahead and I want to talk about this Colorwork chart. So in this chart, it's worked from bottom up and always from right to left. For our very first row, these X's indicate no stitches. The reason why there's no stitches is because we'll be increasing this and adding stitches as we go, but those stitches don't yet exist, so we just ignore them for now. For round 1, we'll start with our color B, and then we'll work 2 in the color A, and that's our repeat around. We work that again and again until we get back to the beginning of the round. And then you'll see this symbol, and that symbol is meant to increase. So we increase in that stitch when we see that symbol, and you'll see me talk about that when we switch back to the original color of yarn for the sweater dress. But I want to work this round 1 in this color just so you can see how that's done, and then we'll come back with the other color for round 2. So for this round, my very first color will start in the color B, and we'll be working in the back loops only for this round, and we will not be joining in each round, so you'll want to grab a stitch marker to mark the first stitch. So I'm going to go right into the back loop only of that very first slip stitch, and I'm going to go ahead and attach my yarn and do the very first stitch in that color B. So, back up. All right. For this very first round, I'm going to be starting it in my color B, so I'm actually going to back up a step. And when I work this very last stitch, I'm going to yarn over and join with my new color, and now I'm ready to work in the first stitch of the round. To work the very first stitch, we're going to be doing a single crochet in the back loop only. So I'm going to enter the back loop only, that previous slip stitch, and then do a single crochet. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that first stitch of that round. But notice I did pull that through my stitch, but when we're changing colors, we're going to back up a step to where we have 2 loops on the hook. We'll want to grab our new color, yarn over with our new color, and pull through to complete that stitch. That way that stitch is done in the color it's needed to be done in, and the next stitch is ready to be worked in the new color. So now I'll do 2 in the color A, but now I'm going to switch back to the color B. Then 1 in the color B, and 2 in the color A. And we'll work that all the way around. So in the next clip, you will see that it has this similar stitch pattern in the chart. I've just shifted it so that it works out better with this updated chart, but everything coming up next is still what we need to be doing in terms of increasing. The only differences will be increasing in our stitches that are the color B. Now that I've finished round 1, which I'm already enjoying seeing these color pops here, it's time for us to do a round 2, and this will all be done in the color A. So we're not going to be having to worry about switching colors on this first round, that we will start working the split single crochet as well as increasing. So right off the bat, our very first stitch in this round will be an increasing stitch. Now we will be starting our very first stitch in the split single crochet. So what that means is in the front of this V, that's where you will enter your stitch. And in the back, you can kind of see in the blue here, there's an upside down V that we go between as well. Then we'll yarn over, pull up the loop, make sure it has some space, then yarn over and complete that stitch. Let's go ahead and mark that first stitch in the round. And now we'll need to add our increased stitch as indicated. So we'll insert again into that same spot, pull up that loop, and complete that stitch. And then we will repeat that all the way around. And from here on out for this color work portion, we will be working in the split single crochet for every single stitch. And then for this round, we're going to be adding some increasing. Now I want to add that if this ever feels like it's hard on your hands to do, or you're having a hard time entering the stitch, or it just feels a bit painful, take a second and stop. Relax your hands. This stitch should work as quickly as a single crochet works. At first, it might feel a bit different, but once you get used to it, it really works up quite quickly. So as you'll see, I can work this stitch quite fast. I need to go back and do an increase, however, but you want to make sure that you're pulling up that second loop so that on the next round, when you do insert your hook, it inserts quite easily and works quite fast. It can take a little bit of practice, so don't get discouraged. This is a great round of practice on, and we'll be increasing on this round. And then on the next round, we'll come back and do a little bit of color work, and I want to talk about how to carry your yarn on the back of this work on our next round. Now for rounds 3 through 8, we won't be doing any more increasing until we get to round 9. We'll just be enjoying some fun color work, and we're going to bring in our color C. Now for this round, I want to talk about how to carry the color work on the back of your work. Now as far as color B goes for the first round, I went ahead and fastened off because I won't be using it for quite a few rounds, so I don't want to have to deal with extra strands hanging out, and that would be too long of a jump for us to carry it until we get to it again at round 10. So I still have my color A attached, and I'm ready to bring in my color B. Now the first stitch in this round is my color B, so I'm going to go ahead and back up on the last stitch of the last round, move my stitch marker there, and I'm going to yarn over with the color B, and now I'm ready to work the very first stitch of the round in the color B. And these increased stitches, I work them the exact same way. I'm just working into the center of the stitch and working that. I'm going to go ahead and mark the first stitch in this round, and here's where I want to know on how we should be carrying our yarn across the back of our work. Now I'm only going to be carrying the yarn for 3 stitches here before I use the color A again. So really, if we look at the back, I know we have a few strands hanging out, but carrying that short distance really isn't bad at all. We want to make sure we don't pull too tight, and we want it to have enough space. But if I were to say to carry this for more than 3 stitches, so let's say that I was going to be working a stretch of colors for 5 or 6 stitches, or even 4 stitches, because later on in this pattern, we will have stretches of colors that are carried for that length. So this is the repeat for round 3. Now I'm just going to show you hypothetically what to do if you were to carry yarn 4 aways. So let's say I had 5 stitches in a row of this color C. When I get about halfway between the 5 stitches, so I'm in the 3rd stitch, I'll want to take my color, my other color that I'm carrying, across my hook and just let it lay there. And then I'm going to finish my stitch around that color, and then I can keep on going. But look what it does. It catches that yarn so that the float on the back of the work isn't stretching across 5 stitches, which can be quite dangerous. It can cause some puckering. It won't lay as well. And the other reason why I like to carry or float across the back of the work is I find it really helps with drape. If I were to crochet over say this color A for the entire round, it adds a bit of bulk, and the split single crochet stitch already adds some bulk. So I don't want to add too much bulk. So it's really nice to just simply catch your yarn every so often. So I'm going to show that one more time. If I were to catch my yarn so that my flow on the back isn't any more than 3 stitches, I simply lay my color A across my hook and then work over it. And then I can just let it drop and keep going. So it does a nice drape for this fabric. See that on the back? It's really nice to have those nice even floats. Now for the rest of this pattern, I am going to let you go work this up on your own because you know everything you need to know in order to work this colorwork portion, and it would be really boring if I did that on camera. So go ahead and work through rounds 28, and when you come on back, you are going to have the most gorgeous yoke ever. I will note when you're creating this yoke, right now it's laying perfectly flat, but we won't be increasing for a while, so you'll see that it starts to angle a bit. What I mean is instead of staying flat here, it'll kind of come in and it won't lay as flat for a time, and then we'll add some more stitches and it will help even it out, and then we will be doing some aggressive blocking once we get all this color work done, and I will show you what that looks like. So go grab an audiobook or a TV show or sit out on your back patio. I just really want you to enjoy the process of doing this color work. It's not something that needs to be rushed. Enjoy watching these stitches and the pattern work up to a beautiful yoke, and I'll see you when you get that section done. I thought I would show my blocking on camera today just so you can see a bit of this process. So I have gone ahead and I did a gentle soak of this just underneath some water, and I took a towel and pat it dry. I don't want to really disturb the stitches too much. Like you don't want to be doing any scrubbing or anything like that. It's just to get it wet so it's a bit more flexible. This is wet blocking. So I'm going to take my yoke. We notice that it doesn't sit perfectly round, but we really do want it to. So I've got this blocking mat and I have these Knitter's Pride pins. I love these. I find that it goes much faster than the individual pins, but also the individual pins are just fine for this as well. What I like to do is kind of find the center and arrange my neck opening. Now, a lot of this is going to scrunch around here. That's okay for now. We're just going to go ahead. We're going to put that neck opening in a nice circle, and we're going to be pinning it. Now, what I like to do when I pin is I like to do it in force. I like to start in force for everything when it comes to a circle because it really helps you get a nice and even pin. And then I'll go ahead and pin in between all of those. So if you had something like a design that was a bit more connected, this one is a bit like with these breaks in between, it looks great. But let's just say I had a really aggressive lean going on. This is the point where you kind of want to twist and take out that whatever way the lean is going. This one seems just fine to me. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull out one side and pin it, pull out the other side and pin it. Now I will probably come back and readjust those depending on how aggressive I feel like that pull is to see if it's too aggressive or it needs a little bit more. My goal here is to get this as a flat circle. So now I'm going to go ahead on this side, and this is where you can really see that there's a bit more resistance in the stitches when it comes to getting it. But you shouldn't pull it so tight that there's too much resistance. I'm not really yanking, I'm just gently moving that fabric so that it is going to be laying flat. So now that I've got my 4 points, I'm going to go ahead and place a point in between those 4. And as you can see, this really starts to flatten out to be a really nice circle, and it will fit a lot better. And it will also, these stitches, this will also help those stitches kind of even out as well and look so much better when it's worn. I don't ever recommend for these type of sweaters skipping this step because this step really makes it wearable. It makes it so that it's looks nice. It's like ironing your clothes. It's wearing a wrinkled shirt versus a shirt that's pressed. So this makes it look really nice. So I'll go ahead and finish adding in all of these areas to finish off that blocking. So now that I've gotten to this point, I might really look at it and readjust some of my areas if some are in more less than out. But overall, you don't have to be too picky about it. Now I just let it dry. So now that we are back, I've worked one additional round in a solid color in that split single crochet, and we're ready to move to the next steps of this where we're going to change our stitch pattern. To get started with this stitch pattern, we're going to be placing our very first stitch into the back loop only. So we're doing a single crochet stitch in the back loop only. And then we are going to go ahead and mark this stitch as the first stitch in the round. So especially since we're working continuous, we want to do that. Now that we've got that stitch marker in place, our next stitch will be a split single crochet again. So the same stitches we've been working, but we're just going to mix it up between two stitches. So that we'll be working the very next one into the back loop only, and then the next as a split single crochet. So we're just rotating back and forth between those two stitches, single crochet in the back loop only, split single crochet, and work that all the way around in that stitch pattern. This is actually our established stitch pattern for the remaining of the stitches for this sweater. Now you will continue to work in that stitch pattern. For this size, I did an additional 3 rounds. You're always working the same stitch into the round below. It's really easy, fun stitch repeat. So if you see a split single crochet, you work a split single crochet. If you see a back loop only, you work a back loop only, and it creates a really nice texture. The next thing we'll do is split for the body and the sleeves. Depending on what size you're working, you'll have a few more rounds until you get to this point. But this is where the sweater really starts to take some shape. I've placed some stitch markers around here. You don't have to because the stitch counts are in the pattern, but I have stitch markers marking where I'm going to be working to, and that's where we're going to be dividing for the sleeves and the body. Now for the size small, we'll first be chaining and skipping some stitches, then working along the other stitches, and then we'll chain again and skip and work the body. So let's get started with that. For the size small, we're going to be chaining 8 stitches. This will be the stitches that go underneath the arms, and then we're going to skip the next 40 stitches, and then we will work the next 56 stitches in the established stitch pattern. So you had to fold your piece a bit here. It's no longer going to lay flat like a circle. So after skipping 40 stitches, I go to that very next stitch, which happens to be in the back loop only, and I'll single crochet that, and then I'll keep working in that established stitch pattern. We're just working the same stitch from the round below. So working across those 56 stitches. So now that we worked the 56 stitches, I'm moving my stitch marker out of the way here. We are going to repeat that again. So I will do exactly what we did one more time to make space for the other sleeve. I'll chain 8, then skip the next 40 stitches and work the last 56 stitches in the stitch pattern repeat. Now that we're back around, we can see where we're going to be putting our arms and our body. We have the holes for our arms, and next we're going to work on the body. I just want to make a note here. If you are not sure how much yarn you have in your stash for this project, and you're not sure if you want to make a sweater or a dress, go ahead and work the arms first, and then see if you have enough length for the body. A lot of times when I have yarn in my stash I want to use, it's best to do it that way. So if I have enough when I get there, the arms are done, I don't have to worry about it. If I don't, I can just make a crop top or a sweater instead of the sweater dress. So for this pattern, I'm going to be going onto the body. We're going to be working across these chain stitches. Like I said, if you want to work the sleeves first, you can skip to that. But the first time we work across the chain stitches for working this body portion, we're going to be working in a single crochet stitch. Now on the next round when we come back, we will be able to work these stitches in pattern, but we can't really work them in pattern across the chains. Now I just want to note the remaining of this body is just working in the rounds in that stitch pattern around and around again until we build the length of your sweater or sweater dress that you want. But I also want to talk about shaping. We all have different bodies and different shapes. I know my hips are wider than my bust. I'm not very blessed in my bust, so I'm going to need more stitches in my hips than I'll need up top. So I will be working inward towards my waist and then outwards towards my hips. And to do this, we'll be decreasing on each side. So shaping really comes to the customization of any garment. It's really up to your body shape. So I'm going to tell you how to shape and then leave it for you to shape it. The nice thing about this garment is it's try on as you go, see how it goes to your waist, see how it's going to your hips, and keep trying it on again and again. That's the beauty of top down. You can determine if you want to take stitches out or put stitches in. But let's talk about how we do this. So if I were going to decrease down towards my waist, I'm going to decrease on the left and the right side of the garment, so along the sides of my body, and I will be single crocheting stitches together. Every time I decrease, I'll be decreasing by 2 stitches. So 2 stitches on each side of the body. To do this, I want to work across 3 stitches, but in this stitch pattern, I want to show you the best way I found to decrease. So to do this decrease, we will insert our hook into the next split single crochet stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. Then we're going to skip the next stitch completely, insert into the next split single crochet, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all the loops on the hook. That's a single crochet 3 together. We're just skipping that center stitch because it has a little bit less bulk and it's a nice decrease. Now we'll start working right back into that stitch pattern where we're working in the back loop only, and when we come around again, we'll work this as a split single crochet. So your decrease will just go right in there as a little hidden stitch. It'll come together and you work that decrease on the next round as a split single crochet, and the stitch pattern still works out. So every single time you decrease on the left and right side, you'll be decreasing by 4 stitches per round, and then you can shape that how you like towards your body shape. Now, if we need to increase, because I will need to increase at my hips, we will simply place 3 single crochet stitches into the same split single crochet. And then when we come back around on the next round, we'll be working those in the stitch pattern where the center stitch of this will be a back loop only. So it'll go split single crochet, back loop only, single crochet, split single crochet into those 3 stitches on the next round. And it just adds 2 stitches per side. If you're doing an increase on the sides, you're going to do an increase on the left and increase on the right, and it will increase out towards, say, your hips. So that's how we're going to increase and decrease as we work this pattern. Try it on as you go. If you need an increase or decrease, that's how we're going to do it, and it's going to look fantastic. Welcome back. As you can see, I've made a ton of progress on this sweater dress. I have decided to make this into a dress, so I've done a lot of length. And if you can see, I've also shaped this. I've decreased along each side, all the way down. I'm shaping this custom to my figure, and then I increased back out. So you can kind of see where this decreased and then increased to fit over my hips. The key to making something custom is trying it on a lot. So the nice thing about this design is doing a top down, you can try it on as many times as you need as you go. Let me tell you, I threw this on over my head and stood in front of the mirror several times deciding like, oh, I'm going to take it in one more time and I'm going to let it out. I'm going to add a few more stitches at the bottom, and it makes it really easy to do those decreases and increases. Now, if you did not want to do that, that's fine. I really think this would be a cute box sweater dress, and you can always throw a belt around the middle. So I have gone all the way down to the point where now I want to do some ribbing along the bottom. So let's do that next. So to do the ribbing along the bottom edge, we're going to start by doing a slip stitch into the next stitch. I just find it evens this out nicely. And then we're going to chain 15. Now I'm going to keep using my H hook for this ribbing because I don't actually want it to be too tight around my legs. I'm not trying to bring necessarily the design inwards, I'm just adding a nice detail. Now for this very first row, I'm going to kind of tighten down that last chain, and we're going to start by single crocheting in the second chain from the hook and in each chain across. So it will be a total of 14 single crochet stitches. Now that I've done those 14 single crochet stitches, I'm going to do a slip stitch into the next 2 stitches from the body of this sweater dress. And then I'm going to turn my work. And now we are going to skip those 2 slip stitches and we're going to work the 14 stitches in the back loop only. So from here on out, all of these ribbing stitches will be worked in the back loop only. So I'll single crochet 14 in the back loop only after skipping those 2 slip stitches on the body. Now after doing those 14 single crochets in the back loop only, I will turn again. And I'm going to be working in the back loop only, single crocheting back down to the edge of the body. Now you can chain 1 if you would like, or you can omit it altogether. It's not totally necessary, and you can just simply start in the back loop only with your first single crochet stitch. And then do that all the way down the 14 stitches in the back loop only. And then when you get to the body, you will slip stitch 2 stitches from the body, turn, skip those 2 slip stitches, and repeat single crocheting in the back loop only. So we're working this in rows. We're just going back and forth all the way along the bottom edge of this body, and then we will join with our first row. I'm going to come back and show you how to join this, but I want to mention when you do start this, make sure that you're starting your ribbing on the side of your garment. That way, even though our seam will be a little bit invisible, we don't really want to put any seams directly on the front or back of our garment. So keep on doing these rows, enjoy that, and then come on back. So once this ribbing has been done all the way along the bottom, which I am loving the thickness of this, it's time for us to go ahead and join. So here's how we're going to join our starting edge with our current edge. We're going to insert the next stitch in the back loop only, just like we have been, but then we're also going to insert it into the loop from this first edge. Then we will yarn over and slip stitch. So pulling through all the loops on the hook. And then we'll do that for the next stitch, back loop only, grab that first loop from that first row and slip stitch it together. Do that all the way down for all the stitches, and then I will join them with a nice join. Now, an alternative way to join these is also to use a tapestry needle and seam it. So if you were slip stitching, you slip stitch all the way down, then fasten off and weave in your end. Or if you prefer to sew it, you can go ahead and cut a length of yarn, grab your tapestry needle, and then we're going to go through the stitches. Now to seam these 2 edges together with your tapestry needle, you will go through the back loop of your current row, but for the very first stitch, we're going to come up that back loop because otherwise we would be undoing this stitch. So you'll come up the back loop and then go through the first loop on the first side. And then we're just going to keep seaming back and forth. So we'll start on this side this time, we'll go through the first loop, and then we're going to come through the back loop of our next stitch. And we're just going to keep going back and forth between the back loop of the current row we were on and the loop from the first row. And we're just going to seam those together and try to hide that seam as much as possible. And now we can weave in our ends and then finish our sleeve. So now it's time to come back and work the sleeves. I've already done one sleeve so we can see where we're going, and we're going to talk about that. And we'll start this sleeve. So before we get started, there's a couple things I want to go over for the sleeves. When we work our first round, you'll notice I haven't sewed this yet. There might be a bit of a hole in the front and a little bit in the back. You'll use your tail end when we weave in our ends to help that hole close. So this is quite normal for garments when you're working in the round. You'll come back and pull those stitches a bit tighter by weaving in those ends and making it look clean. Then for the sleeves, I also want to talk about decreasing. So just like I showed how to decrease on the sides, we will be decreasing all the way down underneath the arm for a tapered sleeve. That means it's going to come from wide to a bit more narrow as we get to the cuff. So we will be decreasing for differently for each size, but it's the same type of increase. For the size small, we'll be decreasing every 7 rounds, and for other sizes that will be a bit different. It's a really nice decrease. I don't find it to be too conspicuous when you're wearing it, and it is all underneath. I keep it underneath the arm. So let's go ahead and talk about how to create this sleeve. All right, so we're going to look at our sleeve opening, and we have this area underneath the arm where we will attach our yarn. So you can simply attach towards the center underneath the arm to where one of those previous chain stitches were. And then let's just go ahead and attach with a slip stitch. So leaving a long tail so that we can come back and sew any gaps later, then we will attach. Now we are going to be working 48 stitches for this size all the way around this opening. So you'll be working the stitches, the chain stitches from underneath, and then we'll be working these stitches in the established stitch pattern and then back underneath. But the stitches that we're working into the chains for this very first round, they will simply be a single crochet stitch. So once we get to the working those single crochet stitches in the chains, we're going to kind of rotate our work, and we're going to work right into the next stitch that we would work. And this is for me in the back loop only, and work that in the stitch pattern, and notice how it kind of creates that hole there. That's okay. Just keep on going, simply working the 48 stitches in the established stitch pattern. So now we're back to the first stitch in the round, and we're not going to join. We're going to work continuous just like we've been doing. So we will go right into that first stitch, but we'll need to know if that first stitch is a split single crochet or a single crochet in the back loop only. And to do that, you'll want to look at your established stitch pattern over here and go backwards. So this one is a split. This will be back loop, split, back loop, split, back loop, and my first stitch in this round will be a split single crochet. If you would like to go ahead and mark the first stitch of the round, it's not a bad idea. That way you'll know when you get back around where to decrease and how many rounds you've worked. Now your sleeve will already start to feel a little bit easier once you've got a few rounds done. We see our little gaps here. We'll sew in later and make those look nice and clean. But as you get going, it's really just a lot of rotating and working around and around. And don't forget, for this size, after every 7th round, we are going to decrease until we have a total of 36 stitches. So after every 7th round, you'll decrease. And then once you get to 36 stitches in the round, you'll keep it at 36 and then continue to work in the established stitch pattern for a total of 60 rounds. So let's go over that on this other sleeve again. So when I started this sleeve, after my 7th round, I did my first decrease. We can see that right here. Now when it comes to decreasing, you can always try it on and see how it's going, making sure that decrease stays underneath your arm, or you can fold it over nice and how it will be when it sits on you, and then because these actually end up being quite straight on our arms, which is nice, but see where that underarm line is, where to decrease, because your decrease will not always happen at the first stitch of the round. We're single crocheting 3 together, and the way it shifts things, you'll want to make sure that after every 7th round you're doing your decrease underneath your arm. Then once you're finished decreasing, you'll continue to work in that established stitch pattern and until you have a total of 60 rounds from the beginning, and then we'll come back and work on that cuff. So once we have worked our sleeve down to the amount of stitches that we need and the amount of rows before that cuff, we're ready for the cuff. And guess what? You already know how to do it. The only difference is we're going to be going down to a G-hook to pull that cuff in. It is the exact amount of stitches and instruction that we did on the bottom of this sweater dress, or if you're making it to just a regular sweater, but we're just going to be going down a hook size. That way it pulls in a bit and gives a bit more of a fitted look. So we will do the same amount of stitches, the same instructions as the bottom, but we're just going to be doing it with a G-hook around the end of your sleeve. And now we have a gorgeous sweater dress to wear. I'm so excited to wear this out this season. I love the way it turned out. I need to weave in a few more ends, but I cannot wait to weave in my ends and throw this on and take it out on my next date night. I wish I could show you this whole thing on camera in this small frame size, but I'll have some images obviously in this video so you can see, and I can't wait to get it out, get it photographed, and wear it. It's super cozy. This was the perfect yarn choice for this. The swish is such a nice drape and such a dream to wear. Thank you so much for joining me. Subscribe and come back for your next project soon.